We live in trying times. Over the past several months, there have been a series of unfortunate events, most notably the loss of life, just across the board, be it from police brutality or because of the riots. The first and worst thing we should mention is that it's a shame that we would lose even a single life. And now I believe we have a couple dozen who have died. But also, businesses have been destroyed by COVID and by rioters, and people are truly suffering right now. I think one thing people truly want is justice, and unfortunately, we will not get it. For one group of people, it will never be enough. In Atlanta, when an officer killed a man named Rayshard Brooks, they charged him with felony murder. It wasn't enough. The officers in Minneapolis in the George Floyd incident were all arrested as well. The riots continued. It wasn't enough. Now, in Portland, in line with many other cities, the criminal charges against dozens of Portland's rioters have been dropped. Of course, like we see with so many news outlets, they say protesters. I'm sorry. This includes people who were arrested on felony charges, including arson. The charges were dropped. At least in the more extreme cases, it would seem that a grand jury refused to indict these individuals. Perhaps because the people of Portland want to see this action, want to see these people succeed. Or perhaps because the prosecutors are terrible at their jobs, or even worse, purposefully inept. They want these people to get off. I can't tell you why, but in line with everything we've seen around the country, from New York to Fort Worth, and Chicago, where now thousands of people have been released without charge following the widespread riots, I have to wonder if this is just the next step in morality policing. Look, I'll tell you, it's one thing if you've got somebody in, say, Chicago. There was around 800 plus individuals who were released, who had their charges dropped. They were low tier, non-violent offenses related to protest, maybe obstructing a roadway or something like that. And Kim Foxx, the attorney most famous for letting Jussie Smollett off, said that they didn't have the budget. The budget was slashed and they're not going to pursue it. I wonder why they didn't just, try to find some of these people. But when I look at that, it's I can't say it's bad. I'll put it that way, that we're seeing all of these people violate CDC guidelines, violate the lockdown orders amid all of this chaos. And there's no justice. There's no penalty. There's nothing for it. But this is the worst I've ever seen. I don't know why it's happening, but felony arsonists are being released. I want to talk to you about justice. I want to start with this story, but I've got another story for you as well. The man in Seattle who drove his vehicle on a highway hitting two protesters, his family says he is a supporter of Black Lives Matter. He, in fact, is a black man. GoFundMe took down his fundraiser for a defense. This is not justice. Even the worst of the worst are granted a public defender or some right to defend themselves in court. And through the private sector and the expansion of the internet, it would seem we're actually losing our rights as these big tech companies take away the commons. There will not be justice so long as this continues. And unfortunately, I can't tell you what the solution is. Perhaps Section 230 reform will bring back speech. I think that's the first thing we need to do. But I don't know if we can accomplish it. There's so much that would have to happen by November. And not only that, it's just one brick in the wall that needs to be built to protect justice, civil rights, etc. Let's read this story here from KGW8. Criminal charges against dozens of Portland protesters dropped. A review of court records showed 59 people arrested during Portland demonstrations had charges dismissed, including several people arrested on felony charges. I'm sorry, you can't call them protesters when these gatherings result in violence. We had just the other day, a federal officer was struck in the head with a hammer. I don't think it's fair to say these are demonstrations or protests. I'm sorry. And maybe even riot isn't acceptable either. When you have felony arsonists attacking public buildings, federal courthouses, it's something well beyond this. They say dozens of protesters arrested during mass demonstrations in downtown Portland have had their criminal charges dropped and cases closed. KGW analysis of police and court records show that Multnomah County District Attorney's Office dropped charges against at least 59 of the roughly 400 protesters arrested since mass demonstrations started in Portland in late May. They're still going on to this day, mind you. They have not stopped. Most of the dropped charges were misdemeanor offenses, such as interfering with a police officer, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. Now I want to stop there and say, I'm not really that perturbed by misdemeanor offenses, disorderly conduct being dropped, or resisting arrest. However, the problem comes when the snowflakes form that avalanche. Across this country, we have demonstrators who are getting away with going out, doing whatever they want. And this is at a time when people are told to stay indoors. When they would criticize Donald Trump for holding an outdoor rally, they would criticize the anti-lockdown protesters. But this is okay. And when these people actually get arrested for a crime, the charges are dropped. That is not justice. For the businesses that were destroyed, be it by COVID or the riots, this is not justice. 9 cases dismissed by prosecutors involved more serious felony charges, including riot, arson, and theft in the first degree. In one case, Portland police arrested a 25-year-old protester for allegedly setting fire to a Chase Bank in downtown Portland on May 30th. The second night of large-scale protests in the city, the Portland resident was charged with arson, criminal mischief, and riot. KGW is not naming the person because charges have been dismissed. Now, it's fair to point out as well, one of the reasons the charges may be dismissed is because they can't prove it. And I want to make sure I state innocent until proven guilty is one of the civil liberties that I would absolutely love to uphold, particularly the Fifth Amendment, the right to due process, etc. However, it's also possible that the tactics used by Antifa and the far left have obscured their identities and made it very difficult for prosecutors to get charges against them, in which case we are still not going to see justice. Even if the person arrested was the wrong person, then the perpetrators are getting away with it. A Multnomah County prosecutor described in a probable cause affidavit how the person bragged about using a Molotov cocktail to start the fire and talked about plans to go out on another mission, and the goal would be to set another fire. When confronted by detectives, the person admitted being present when the fire started but denied setting it, according to court documents. And there's a challenge. Is this a dumb kid bragging to friends, talking big, and there's no hard evidence? If there is reasonable doubt, then I would say they're not, then they're not guilty, right? However, a grand jury indictment is not that. A grand jury indictment is probable cause. A trial by jury determines reasonable doubt. Grand juries typically return indictments fairly easily. If this person bragged about doing it, and there is evidence that they were there, then a real jury should hear what they have to say. Unfortunately, the grand jury in Portland wouldn't do it. They say a Multnomah County grand jury heard evidence in the case and declined to return an indictment. All charges were dropped. It is not clear why other cases were closed. Charges can be filed later if they are submitted within statute of limitations, the time limit allowed by law. Prosecutors sometimes delay filing because they need additional investigation or police reports have not been forwarded to the DA's office. Through a spokesperson, retiring Multnomah County District Attorney Rod Underhill declined to comment. Mike Schmidt, who assumes the office on August 1st, previously said he would consider dropping charges against nonviolent demonstrators once in office. My approach is really going to be thoughtful and review the cases and think about what prosecutions are necessary for public safety. Schmidt reaffirmed during an interview with KGW. I want to read that for you one more time. Mike Schmidt, who assumes office on August 1st, said he would consider dropping charges against nonviolent demonstrators once in office. That is the city. If you live in Portland, I can only assume you support what's happening. And Donald Trump, maybe you got to send in feds to protect these buildings. I honestly don't know what you do. If the residents of Portland don't want your federal courthouse there, then what do you do? If it's going to be besieged by these protesters and violent rioters, and the prosecutor says the nonviolent ones get a free walk, what do you do, man? Schmidt noted many other protest cases that are still open have been delayed due to COVID and temporary court closures at the downtown Justice Center, creating a huge backlog. Schmidt said once in office, he plans to work with experienced prosecutors in the Multnomah County DA's office to decide how to handle protest cases, really to ensure that our resources are best spent to ensure public safety. Over the past 2 months, Portland police have provided almost daily accounts of alleged criminal activity surrounding demonstrations, including a list of names of people arrested, their ages, and charges. KGW's review of court and jail records found most of those suspects do not spend any time in jail. Instead, they're often given a citation or booked and released. The city clearly likes what's happening there. So then what's the real problem? It would seem that the violent rioters that are attacking the feds, the federal courthouse, the only complaint the city has, or I'm sorry, there is no complaint. The city likes the attack on the federal government. That's the only thing I can assume if they're going to say this. On June, if the police are just catching and releasing, people are not getting charges and they're going out and doing it again, the cops must like what they're doing. And it's U.S. Marshals guarding this courthouse. Maybe that's the real battle. Maybe the local jurisdiction doesn't like the federal government. On June 15th, Portland police issued a press release detailing the arrest of 14 adults related to overnight demonstrations. The protesters range in age from 19 to 52 years old. The charges listed by Portland police included disorderly conduct, interfering with a police officer, resisting arrest, escape in the third degree. Court records indicate charges against all 14 defendants have been dropped and their cases are closed. What that does is it makes arrests meaningless, said Josh Markey, former Clatsop County District Attorney. The former prosecutor was not involved in these decisions and believes it would be unfair to give demonstrators who violate the law a free pass. It is incomprehensible to me that you could have downtown Portland destroyed the way it has, tens of millions of dollars in damage, and say, well, there's no accountability for that, explained Markey. Prosecuting arrest cases are not always a slam dunk, said criminal defense attorney Victoria Zafarian. A lot of times, because of the Portland community being so liberal, we see people acquitted of low-level charges. Zafarian explained police officers have broad discretion whether to arrest someone during a protest. For example, an officer could charge someone with misdemeanor disorderly conduct for blocking traffic. That decision doesn't always hold up in court when scrutinized by a jury. Were they intentionally obstructing traffic, or were they actually intentionally screaming their First Amendment rights? Whatever they are saying, like Black Lives Matter, are not intentionally obstructing traffic when doing that. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler believes prosecutors have a duty to go after the most serious crimes related to protests, saying, if people are engaged in serious criminal activity, things like arson or boarding up a building and trying to set it on fire, those people should absolutely be criminally prosecuted. If you don't, that encourages people to engage in further acts of criminal activity. Well, as we now know, several individuals on felony charges are going to walk. Perhaps they're innocent. That's the most important thing I can say. Maybe the reason the charges are dropped is because there was no legitimate evidence. Perhaps it's because the grand jury was presented with crummy prosecutors, or the prosecutors just could not make the case. I will not make the assumption just because they were arrested that proves they were guilty. However, that still means there will not be justice, because those who did start those fires, well, they will get away with it. I want to talk to you about the broader implications of what we're seeing with morality policing, because it extends to the digital level. I bring you now to this tweet from Rawa. This individual is Liberation for the African Diaspora, and she says Black Bloc, and that's her account. The Colette family is raising funds to cover the legal expenses for DeWitt Colette following the July 4th incident. Learn more about how you can contribute through DeWitt's GoFundMe here. This man on the right, DeWitt Colette, is a black man. He worked for DoorDash in Seattle. Somehow, he entered a closed freeway, was driving down the freeway when he came up around a bend and there were vehicles obstructing the road. He swerved to the shoulder to dodge them. On the other side was a large group of protesters. He swerved to dodge them and unfortunately struck two, killing one. He's been arrested and charged with vehicular homicide, which is a manslaughter charge, meaning an accidental death. His bond was set at $1.2 million. This to me is shocking. The man clearly made a mistake. It was an accident. But many leftists have tried claiming that it was a directed attack, an outright murder. I don't think we can prove that. And I think based on the evidence we've seen, it stands to reason this dude is just, well, he's dumb. The police, in one statement at least, or in a couple statements, said they believe he may have entered the exit ramp of the highway because they had used police vehicles to block the on-ramps. Perhaps it was intentional. Perhaps he just made a wrong turn. Wrong turns happen. These protesters have been blocking this highway. It's an interstate for, I believe, around 19 days. I wonder why none of them were charged or arrested. The police said it was easier just to shut the highway down and not deal with it. This was in Seattle, mind you. This individual is now facing prison over what seems to be an accident. The family says that he is a supporter of Black Lives Matter. This woman, Rawa, says, thank you to all those who have donated and shared my, GoFundMe. Unfortunately, or my tweet. Unfortunately, this campaign has been wrongly suspended. Rawa then tweeted out this tweet. GoFundMe has suspended DeWitt Collette's GoFundMe due to alleged violation of its terms of service. There's been no additional comment provided by the company. Ironically, they are promoting their Justice and Equality fund. DeWitt, a Black Lives Matter supporter, deserves the right to a fair trial. She's right. Look, I can tell you my perspective on what happened with DeWitt Collette, but let me just tell you this. I don't know. We can all speculate. I've seen the videos. I've made my assessment. I just told it to you. But perhaps this dude is evil. Regardless, he deserves a fair trial. That is a civil right. And he deserves to have fair representation. Well, it's not always easy to get fair representation. The GoFundMe that was put up for DeWitt has been shut down. Campaign not found. It's gone. And some people note that you can still go to the fundraiser for Diaz Love. Diaz Love, one of the victims, has raised $87,586 of a $100,000 goal. I highlight this to say, with the utmost sincerity, I'm glad she's getting this money. I'm glad the fundraiser is successful. I'm happy to see that she is going to receive money that will help her with potential treatments because she was hit by a car. And I believe Diaz is the one who survived. It seemed to be an accident. And regardless of what they were doing on the highway, maybe they'll face charges. If people choose to give money to this individual, that is their prerogative. She's raised a large sum of money. I hope it helps her heal, and I hope she gets better. I'm not happy to see anybody lose their life. But it is a serious problem when we enter now a reality where digital institutions are taking over the commons, and that means there will not be a fair trial. So as for these individuals who got hit, I believe they shouldn't have been in the highway, and I believe it was an accident. But I also believe they need to be helped. It's sad this woman died, for sure. There's only a certain level of sympathy I can have, though. I mean, if you're going to dance on a highway, and I mean that literally, they were doing the Cupid Shuffle. Look, sometimes accidents happen, and you're playing in a roadway like an interstate. It seems like this DeWitt Collette guy just didn't know what was going on. Didn't know there was a protest, didn't know what was up, and maybe was recklessly driving. I think $1.2 million bond is extreme. But you know what? It's not up to me. It's up to the justice system to work out the innocent until proven guilty. But here's what I want to point out. In Portland, they said that oftentimes the liberal residents refuse to bring up indictments in grand juries. Why was this DeWitt Collette indicted, charged with these crimes? Were there not liberal grand juries in Seattle? I mean, Seattle and Portland are very close. They have very similar political demographics. Was there not a liberal grand jury to see that this is a lower middle class black man who engaged in an accident? Could they not have said, based on the video we've seen and the evidence we've seen, we refuse to return an indictment? Maybe there was no grand jury. I don't know. I'd assume there would be. Maybe not. Maybe in this instance, it's a guy in a car. He got stopped at the scene. The cops arrested him. And the court said, here are your charges. But regardless of how the charges come to be, why is it that you can have someone caught on the scene of where a fire started who admitted to their friends they did it, and the grand jury, or for whatever reason, no indictment, no charges, no one will hear the evidence. There will be no attempt at prosecuting this individual. But this guy driving on a highway, well, he's going to get arrested. $1.2 million bond. I think it's fair to point out this guy killed somebody. I personally think it was an accident based on the footage. I get it, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe he really wanted to go on the highway. But according to this one individual, he's a Black Lives Matter supporter, so it really does seem to be it was an accident. Doesn't mean he's innocent. I mean, he was driving like a moron going up the exit ramp, presumably, or somehow getting on this highway. Maybe the police failed. Maybe the police claim they blocked the on-ramp. Maybe they didn't. Maybe the police were just about to block it, and that's how he got on. Maybe he got on earlier before the protests, and he was having car trouble. No idea. Maybe he pulled over on the shoulder because he thought something was wrong. Then they closed the highway down, started driving again. I don't know. These are things I guess we'll hear in a criminal trial. Our free speech is under threat. Our right to a fair trial is under threat. These big tech companies are taking over common spaces. The commons is a reference to the spaces held by the public. If we used to have our speech events and our discourse at churches, around the workplace water cooler, or in the parks, the famous, I believe it's Hyde Park in the UK, I'm not entirely sure, where they have speakers corner where people come and speak, and they'll be heard, they'll stand on their soapbox. This is all being pushed now to digital spaces. Then these companies will start shutting down speech. And this results in certain ideologies becoming more prominent, and it results in possibly the majority getting oppressed. But we also have general funding. When it comes to taxpayer funding, we have a system for this, and we have public defenders. However, with access to GoFundMe allows certain people to have legal defenses and others to not have legal defenses. This is where things start to become lopsided and we lose our civil rights. If one person commits a crime and GoFundMe says that's someone we support, they can raise $100,000. But if it was DeWitt Clete, a black man, they shut his fundraiser down. Not you. You do not get to defend yourself. But this is a guy who is a black male, supporter of Black Lives Matter, and needs the ability to defend himself. Well, he gets shut down. Innocent until proven guilty. Gone. Because once again, the court of public opinion doesn't care. And that's cancel culture. The digital world is eroding all of our basic civil rights. And how we deal with this, I don't know. Cancel culture destroys your life, whether you're guilty or not. We've seen many stories of people who have been framed. Colin Wright, a researcher, made a big thread about how cancel culture often results in people being falsely accused and losing their jobs or having their careers derailed. The problems are getting worse, and we can see it manifest in the real world. Once they start shutting down certain speech and there's an imbalance, you will then see these ideologies spread to every sector of our government and our cultural institutions. Then arsonists will get released, and people driving their car and getting into an accident will be placed in prison with no right to a defense. If we don't stand up and do something soon, this is the world we're facing, and it will be 10 times, 100 times, several orders of magnitude worse. Again, I don't have all the solutions, unfortunately, but I do think Section 230 reform is a step in the right direction. For those that are not familiar, Section 230 is what gives these big tech platforms immunity from liability in terms of defamation for being the platform by which certain speech is published. But within this, they're granted leeway to remove content they deem to be objectionable or harassing. If Section 230 is reformed to say that you can only remove illegal speech, then there will be a rebalancing of political discourse, something that the far left really doesn't want because clearly they're dominating. But the rights of regular citizens are being oppressed. And if you don't deal with this, you will end up with a very far-right government. It will flip the other direction when people start to revolt the other way. I'll leave it there. I don't know what's going to happen in Portland, but the protests, the riots, the extreme actions, they're still happening. And I'm not going to tell you what should or shouldn't happen with DeWitt Clete, but I will tell you he deserves a right to a fair defense, period. I'll see you on the next segment coming up at 4 p.m. over at timcast.net. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you there.